My fiancée ditched me for my brother right on our wedding day, and now she's back pleading for a lifeline, but I just slammed the door in her face. A couple of years back, I found myself stranded at the altar, feeling like a total fool with my heart in pieces. Just 40 minutes before we were supposed to tie the knot, she bailed on me and took off with my own sibling. I didn't see that disaster coming. Maybe I was too head over heels to notice the red flags waving in my face. We'd been a couple for 6 years, and I genuinely thought we had a good thing going. Looking at it now, though, I was clueless about a ton of stuff that should have tipped me off. She never really put me first in her world. Growing up, my folks always had a soft spot for my brother. He was their shining star, all charm and success, the kind of guy everybody flocked to. Me, I was the low-key one, constantly stuck in a shadow, never quite stacking up in their eyes. That comparison game was nonstop when I was a kid. I'd always hear how I should take a page out of his book or how he'd pulled off something I couldn't touch. I figured it'd ease up as we got older, but nah, it only cranked up a notch. Things just got uglier with time. Anyway, my fiancée seemed like the whole package, sharp, stunning, and full of ambition. But there was this selfish streak in her that I didn't catch early on. It'd pop up in little moments, like her always needing to call the shots or skipping an apology when she'd stung me with her words. I let it slide because I was crazy about her and figured we were laying the groundwork for a solid future. Never in a million years did I think she'd stab me in the back like that. Our wedding day was supposed to be my big win, the best moment of my life. The place was set, the grub was prepped, and all the guests were rolling in. I woke up that morning jittery but pumped, ready to kick off a fresh start with the woman I adored. Then, an hour before showtime, she hit me with a phone call that flipped everything upside down. Her tone was icy, almost detached, as she laid out that she couldn't go through with it. She didn't feel the same anymore. And then came the real gut twister. She'd been sneaking around with someone else, my brother, no less. No trace of regret came through her voice. She claimed she didn't mean to crush me but had to chase what her heart wanted. I couldn't even digest it all before I cut the call short. My parents were already at the venue, and in on it. My brother had spilled the beans to them earlier that day. Instead of having my back, they were scrambling to smooth things over so they wouldn't look bad. When I faced them down, they took her side, brushing it off with lines about how it might be better this way, or that I shouldn't tie myself to someone who'd checked out. Mom even had the gall to say I should be cheering for them. Dad wasn't any help either, just stood there telling me to hold it together like it was no big deal. Later, I pieced together that they'd been in on the whole scheme. My brother had always had his eye on her, and it turns out my folks thought she was too big a catch for me. They'd been nudging her toward him for months, even sweetening the deal with cash if she'd ditch me for their golden boy. I never dreamed my own family could pull something that shady. That day, I bolted from the venue and didn't glance back. I left it all in the dust, my relatives, my buddies, even the town I grew up in. Being near any of them was unbearable. I packed up, moved to a new state, and hit the reset button on my life. Landed a gig, snagged a little apartment, and spent the next couple of years picking up the pieces. Those early days were brutal. I didn't know a soul, and the quiet hit me like a ton of bricks. Over time, though, I settled into a calm I hadn't felt before. I started hanging out with new people, got into therapy, and finally put myself first for a change. I kept my whereabouts off the radar, cutting ties with everyone who'd sold me out. Then, 3 years down the road, my ex-fiancée showed up at my doorstep out of nowhere. I just rolled in from work, swung the door open, and barely clocked who she was at first. She looked ragged, worn out, like she hadn't caught a decent meal or a wink of sleep in forever. That sparkly, put-together vibe she used to rock was long gone. She was trembling, eyes puffy and red from bawling her guts out. Life with my brother had turned into a total train wreck for her. He'd become someone who tried to control her, affecting her emotionally and being unfaithful whenever he chose. The perfect son everybody worshipped was a nightmare when the curtains closed. They'd rushed into marriage not long after our botched wedding, even had a kid together, but it all went south fast. My parents, who'd been all in for her back then, flipped on her when she couldn't keep up their dream image. She felt caged, cut off, and scared out of her mind. Divorce was on her mind, but she was petrified of how he'd retaliate. He had cash, clout, and a nasty temper to match. She was freaking out that he'd drain her bank account and snatch their kid away from her. Showing up at my place, she figured I'd be the one to bail her out. She was banking on me stepping into court to dish the dirt on how messed up and scheming my family could be. In her mind, my words could beef up her fight and lock in custody of her little one. I just stood there, taking it all in, with this slow burn of rage bubbling up inside me. She'd picked her path, no question about it. She'd clocked what a creep my brother was from the jump, yet still ditched me for him like it was nothing. My family's puppet strings didn't faze her. She walked off without a backward glance. And now, after all the hell she put me through, she had the nerve to expect me to swoop in like some hero. I shut her down flat. No shouting, no back and forth, just a simple no before I swung the door shut in her face. That moment felt sweet, like a weight off my chest, but the high didn't stick around long. A few days later, my phone started lighting up with messages. Turns out she'd blabbed about tracking me down, and the gossip spread like wildfire. Old pals and random folks we both knew started hitting me up out of nowhere. They slapped me with labels: selfish, grudge-holding, spineless, for not jumping to aid a damsel in distress. Her old maid of honor, the one who was supposed to have her back at our wedding, fired off this long-winded rant about how I wasn't man enough to rise above it all. She claimed I was just proving my family's low opinion of me right, that I was a pushover who never deserved her to begin with. I couldn't wrap my head around their gall. These were the same people who'd ghosted me after the wedding blew up. Not one of them had my back when I was drowning in that mess, but now they thought they could wag their fingers at me. Most of it I let roll off, but man, it still stung deep. They didn't have a clue what I'd endured, and they didn't give a rip. They just wanted me to clean up a mess I didn't make. Now I'm sitting here second-guessing if I handled it right. I don't owe my ex anything. She made her own choices, and she'll have to handle the consequences. But there's this kid in the mix, a little guy who didn't sign up for any of this craziness. A piece of me keeps nagging that turning her away might screw him over down the line. On the flip side, pitching in would mean cracking the door open to my family's nonsense and her drama again, and I'm not sure I've got the stomach for that. I tossed it out on Reddit, wondering what you all would have done if you were in my shoes. Did I nail it? Or am I just being a selfish jerk? Turns out, that post took off like wildfire, way beyond what I expected. When I first hammered out the whole saga, I wasn't even sure anybody bothered reading it. But now I'm wading through hundreds of replies, some cheering me on, some hitting hard, and it's a lot to chew on. To everybody who chimed in with tips or just threw their 2 cents my way, I appreciate it big time. Whether you're in my corner or not, the backup and fresh takes means something. Putting it all down in words has helped me untangle a mess of feelings, clearing my head a bit. Still, it's kicked up some ghosts I thought I'd shoved way down deep. After I hit post, I spent the night scrolling through what you all had to say. Some folks flagged stuff I hadn't even clocked, like how jumping into her legal mess could backfire, not just for me but for the kid too. Others didn't mince words, telling me to steer clear and keep my distance. The ones who reckoned she'd made her bed and ought to lie in it actually boosted how I felt about slamming that door. But then a bunch of you zeroed in on the kid angle, and that's what's been gnawing at me. I get that I don't owe her squat, but hearing over and over that the little one's the real innocent party here, it stuck with me. Plenty of you suggested I could do something for the kid without diving back into my family's toxic swamp, and that's where I've been hung up ever since. I've got zero interest in crossing paths with her or my brother again. Playing the good guy in this mess just feels like a one-way ticket to more pain. At the same time, I can't shake the itch to do something, even if it's not for her sake. Reading all your takes got me mulling over options that'd keep me out of her orbit and clear of the drama, like maybe just checking with a lawyer to see what'd happen if I stuck my neck out. But the more I chew on it, the more it hits me that this ain't my mess to mop up, especially not if it means facing my rotten family again. Still, that guilt about the kid being trapped in the middle, it just won't quit nagging me. And right on cue, my brother decided to poke his head back into the picture. Yesterday morning, an email from him landed in my inbox. The same guy who hasn't said a word to me in 3 years. The last time we locked horns was the day my wedding went up in smoke. His message was frigid, cutting straight to the chase, and just seeing it made my gut twist. He'd heard that our ex-fiancée had turned to me for help and cautioned me that getting involved would be a big mistake, advising me to avoid family matters or face trouble later. I couldn't peel my eyes off that email for what felt like forever. The urge to fire back hit me hard, but then I stopped and thought, why should I even bother with this jerk? He's the one who shoved me out of my own life like I didn't matter. He'd twisted my ex into his game, and now he's got the balls to act like he can boss me around. The nerve of this guy. I don't even know if nerve cuts it for how ticked off I am. Still, I let it slide and didn't hit reply. Couldn't waste the energy on him. It's almost funny how he still acts like the world owes him something. He's got no clue about the hell I've slogged through these past years, yet he thinks he can call the shots on how I deal with this mess. Hard pass. I'm not playing that game. Right then, my phone buzzed with a call from some random number. And yeah, you can probably guess who was on the line. My mom, breaking 3 years of dead air like it was no big deal. The instant her voice crackled through, every reason I'd ditched her and Dad came rushing back, sharp as ever. No hello, no missed you. She just dove straight into the mess about the divorce and my brother, pushing me to suck it up and smooth things over for the family's sake. That's when I lost it. I don't even recall the exact words, but I made it clear I was done listening to that nonsense. She didn't let up, though, rambling on about how rough my brother had it, and how I'd be hurting the kid if I stayed out of it. I cut her off, saying I didn't give a rip. I wasn't their cleanup crew anymore. Then I just hung up, feeling this hollow numbness settle in. That call reminded me of all the difficulties my parents had put me through. They'd always put my brother on a pedestal, letting his worst crap slide, while I was stuck being the quiet one who ate whatever garbage they dished out. It was never about what I needed, not a single time. I'd always been the spare son, the guy expected to shrug off whatever hit me. Hearing Mom stick up for him again felt like a fresh smack across the face, proving they hadn't changed one bit. Not her, not Dad, not him. That's exactly why I'm not running back into that dumpster fire. Sure, playing the noble guy sounds nice, but I know it'd just toss me right back into that same poisonous loop. So I'm calling it quits. I've made my peace with walking away for good. Still, this whole mess has ripped open some scars I'd sworn were long healed. As much as I'd love to block it all out and pretend it's not real, I can't dodge the fact that there's a kid stuck in the thick of it. I keep picturing how lost he must feel, watching this chaos spin around him. He didn't ask for any of this crap. It guts me to think he might be getting jerked around emotionally, just like my ex was. Even so, I keep telling myself this ain't my battle to fight. I've already been through the ringer enough. I've been wrestling with these mixed-up feelings for a couple days now, trying to sort out my next move. Half of me wants to wipe my hands of it, let them drown in their own mess, and bolt for good. But then there's this other chunk of me wondering if I could lend the kid a hand somehow, without wading back into the muck. I haven't landed on a plan yet. I'm still spinning my wheels. One thing's locked in, though. I'm not sliding back into that doormat version of myself, the one who patched up everybody else's junk while ignoring my own. I've clawed my way too far to let them yank me back down. That gnawing guilt about the kid, though, it's still hanging around, and it's not budging anytime soon. What would you folks do if you were me? Step in or just cut and run? I'm fumbling to figure this out. I thought things might cool off after my last rundown, but nah, I was dead wrong. It's only gotten crazier. I'm seriously wondering how I ever stomached these people for so long. It's like the universe is daring me to stick to my guns. Every time I think I've built a fortress to keep them out, somebody finds a ladder or a crack to sneak through. Since Mom's call, it's been a full-on barrage. It kicked off with a trickle of texts from the extended crew, aunts, uncles, cousins, but now it's like they've all teamed up against me. They're hitting me from every side, griping that I'm tearing the family apart by not backing my brother or, flip side, by not staying out of his mess, when that's exactly what I'm doing. It's nuts how they act like I owe them just because we've got the same DNA running through us. Some of my relatives have even gone off saying I'm just nursing a grudge and not stepping up like a real man should. For the past couple of years, I've poured everything into piecing my life back together, clawing my way out of the poisonous mess they left me in, and now they're acting like I ought to toss all that progress just to dive back into the chaos. Man, it's wearing me out, plain and simple. They don't get that bailing out wasn't about spite. It was about survival, pure and simple. Sticking around in that family setup was like trying to breathe with a pillow smashed over my face, but they're not interested in hearing that side of it. In their book, family's all about blind loyalty, even if it means torching your own happiness and sanity to keep it. On top of the family circus, my ex-fiancée started flooding my inbox with emails every few days. At first, I let them pile up unread, but curiosity got the better of me, and I cracked one open, big mistake. Wish I'd left it alone. They're all the same tune. Her pleading with me to rethink things, hammering how much I could save her and her kid. Each message gets more frantic than the last, and now she's even tossing in pictures of the little guy. I see she's in a bind, no doubt, but it reeks of her trying to play me. She knows I'm not some cold-hearted jerk, and I reckon she's banking on that to reel me in. It's like she's got a map to my weak spots and figures a few tugs on the OL heartstrings make me fold. I'm not dumb. I can spot her game a mile away, but I'd be lying if I said it doesn't leave me feeling lousy. Those photos weren't my idea, didn't ask for him, but she knows I'll peek anyway. Seeing that kid's face, those big eyes staring out, hits me harder than anything else with the guilt stick. I can't shake this nagging sense that I'm dropping the ball for him, even though I'm dead sure staying clear is the smart move. Just when I thought the pile-on couldn't get any heavier, an old buddy rang me up out of nowhere. He's a guy I hadn't swapped words with in years, but word of this mess must have trickled through the rumor mill. It was late one night when his name popped up on my phone, and I nearly let it ring out. I wasn't in the mood for another do the right thing sermon. I picked up anyway, and he didn't bother with small talk, just barreled in, saying I needed to man up and lend my ex a hand, at least to shield the kid. He kept yammering about how I couldn't let a child take the hit for my brother's screw-ups. Not sure if he missed the full story or just didn't care, but he clearly figured I'd jump in 'cause it's the decent thing to do. To him, I'm some kind of villain for not rushing to her rescue right off the bat. I laid it out that I couldn't step in, that this was her, my brother, and my family's mess, not mine to mop up. He wasn't buying it, though, called me pig-headed, said I was clinging to old beefs, insisted the kid needed me like I was his last lifeline. He framed it like I was ditching someone desperate, but here's the kicker. She ain't the only one who's been hurting. I've spent years choking in that toxic swamp, always patching up everybody else's disasters while my own stuff festered. I'm over that gig. I cut the call short, but it left me all tangled up inside. Part of me wanted to lay out my whole case, explain why I'm not touching this, but I held back. It's not my job to fix their train wreck. Deep down, I know she and my family picked their roads, and they've got to ride out the consequences. Still, that guilt keeps clawing at me, no matter how hard I try to shove it off. Lately, it's been tough to keep my head on anything else. I'm questioning every move I make. The other day, I went out with some buddies to shake it off, but my brain wouldn't let go of this crap. One of them cracked a joke about me being a saint for staying out of it, and I forced a chuckle, but it didn't land funny, it just made me feel more cut off. None of my crew really gets what I'm wrestling with here. The handful of folks still tied to my old life either clam up out of fear or just assume I'm doing what's right. But it doesn't feel right, not with a kid caught in the crossfire. I've also been chewing on how my ex's mess could spiral even worse if my brother and parents keep gunning for full custody. No clue how that'd play out, but my family's always had a knack for gaming the system. I've watched him pull it off before. It's got me fretting that the kid could end up in a spot just as rotten, or maybe uglier, than what he's already stuck in. Even with all that bouncing around my skull, I still can't bring myself to wade in directly. So I'm still parked in this rut. Half of me swears staying clear is the solid call, but the other half keeps nagging that I might be blowing it. If I don't lift a finger, will that eat at me forever? And if I do pitch in, will it just suck me back into their cesspool? Feels like I'm damned either way. What would you do if you were me? Step up for the kid even if it means tangling with my messed up family again? Or just keep my distance and let them sort their own junk? After sifting through more of your takes and mulling it over hard, I figured I couldn't just sit on my hands, not for the kid's sake. I don't owe my ex or my family a stupid thing, but it hit me that the little guy didn't sign up for this dumpster fire he was born into. That kid's got no fault in this mess, and if I've got any shot at helping him break free from the toxic swamp my brother and family cooked up, I figured I'd better give it a go. Still, I knew I couldn't let it cost me the calm I'd fought for. If I was going to step up, I had to shield my own sanity. No way was I letting them yank me back into their twisted little circus. I've busted my hump to rebuild my world and set some rock-solid boundaries, and I wasn't about to chuck it all just to wrestle with a mess I can't steer. So I mulled it over for a good while, chewing on every angle, until I landed on what felt like the smartest middle ground. I ended up filing an anonymous tip with Child Protective Services, CPS for short. At first, I wasn't sold on whether that was the play, but the more I rolled it around in my head, the clearer it got. This was my best bet to maybe lend a hand without getting sucked back into the whirlwind. One night, I plopped down with everything I knew, piecing together all the gritty details my ex-fiancée had spilled about my brother's rotten behavior, how my folks had treated her, and just how warped and scheming our family setup had always been. I laid out every scrap I could muster. It wasn't just about the challenges she faced from him. I explored how my brother's desire to control had impacted everyone around him, especially her. I pointed out how he'd always wielded that slick charm of his to twist people, even my parents, into pretending his crap didn't stink. I didn't hold back on how mom and dad had propped him up at every turn, brushing off his junk with excuses while shoving me to the sidelines like I didn't count. I knew CPS needed the full picture of that messed up environment the kid was stuck in. If they were gonna poke around, they had to see it wasn't just my brother being a jerk. The real kicker was how my family kept choosing to back his play instead of holding him to the fire. I even threw in some screenshots from the emails my ex had fired off. She'd written about how terrified she felt for herself and the kid, how trapped she was in that marriage, and how she had nobody left to lean on. I didn't have clear evidence of him harming the child, but I hoped that what I provided would encourage CPS to look into it further. Worst case, they might not find enough to jump in, but at least they'd have the heads up on what's brewing. Somebody had to keep an eye out for that kid, even if it couldn't be me. Sending that report off felt like dropping a boulder off my shoulders. I'd done the right thing without cracking open the door to my old life's madness. I made sure CPS knew I wanted to stay a ghost. No callbacks, no involvement, not even a whisper of my name tied to it. All I cared about was making sure the kid had a shot at being safe. If CPS sniffed out anything worth chasing, I figured they'd take it from there without me in the mix. I wasn't holding my breath for a quick update or some big resolution. Chances are they wouldn't loop me in. And even if they did, it'd be after they'd poked around a bit. Knowing I'd tossed in my 2 cents left me feeling settled. No need to rip open old scars or wade back into their drama swamp. In the end, that report was the slickest way I could pitch in without torching my mental health or the fresh start I'd scratched out. The days after, I tried buckling down on moving forward, but that's a hell of a lot tougher than it sounds. My family's like a dog with a bone. Every time I think they'll back off, another text or email pings through. This round, it wasn't just mom or some far-off cousin stirring the pot. My brother himself decided to jump in, and I didn't even know where to start with that one. He shot me a short, sharp note, calling me out for stabbing the family in the back and being spiteful, warning me I was screwing up big time and I'd pay for it. Something in how he wrote it, though, made me pause. It wasn't all rage. I could smell the worry seeping through. I didn't bother typing back, not worth the effort. The more I chewed on his words, the more it hit me. It was all just another control grab, not about the kid or me, just him flexing. I danced this dance too many times. It's the same old tune where they paint me as the villain for drawing a line and doing what's decent. They're the ones who built this trash heap. I don't owe them a rundown on my choices anymore. Not one bit. As for my ex, she'd gone quiet for a couple days, which was a breather, until one last email popped up yesterday. It was short and sweet, just a quick line saying she was grateful and sorry for the crap she'd put me through. No extras, no fluff. That left me all mixed up inside. Part of me was glad she at least owned up to the hurt she'd dished out, but it also sank in just how rough she's got it now. Maybe something shifted in her corner, or she's finally clocking the real mess she's in. Either way, she's still floundering. I've got no read on how her custody fight's gonna shake out. If there's even a slim chance she can yank the kid out of that poison pit, I'm quietly rooting for her to pull it off. Still, I keep hammering it into my head. I can't dive back in, can't fix her woes. I've already gone above and beyond to pitch in, now it's on the authorities to take the wheel. If CPS digs in and finds enough to move, I've done my bit. If they don't, I've got to swallow that I can't call all the shots, no matter how bad I wanna. Big thanks to everybody who's thrown advice, prompts, or even some tough love my way. Your words really opened my eyes to the bigger mess and gave me the guts to act without waffling. To anybody out there stuck in a similar jam, it's fine to guard your peace. You can give about folks and still hold your ground. Sometimes doing what's right means stepping back and letting the system grind it out. You don't have to shoulder every fix yourself. Just do what you can and pass the baton to the folks built to handle it. I've got no crystal ball on what's next for my ex, my brother, or this whole circus, but one thing's locked in. I'll come out all right, whatever hits. Thanks a ton for sticking with me through this whole ride. If you're into these kind of stories, don't sleep on liking, sharing, and subscribing. Means a lot. Catch you later, and have an awesome day.